Metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown! And today, we are looking at two brand new studio albums from Old Man Gloom, the first of which being Seminar 8, Light of Meaning, the second one being Seminar 9, Darkness of Meaning. Old Man Gloom is one of those rare metal bands that really does put the super back in supergroup, with a lineup that has collectively recorded, toured, and performed with the likes of Cave-In, Converge, Isis, Sumac, Mutoid Man, in turn stylistically acting as some kind of amalgamation of these bands, playing a wild and emotionally complex fusion of post-metal, sludge metal, doom metal, alternative rock, post-hardcore. Okay, I guess Mutoid Man stylistically is the odd man out here, especially with Stephen Brodsky being a relatively new addition to Old Man Gloom. But a tongue-in-cheek approach not too dissimilar from that of Mutoid Man can be found in some of Old Man Gloom's records, despite their inherently somewhat depressing and consuming sound. Take, for instance, the band's somewhat infamous 2014 project, The Ape of God. You see, when it came time to send out promotional copies of The Ape of God for people to review and discuss, Old Man Gloom sent out a fake copy of that record. A new version of the album that was edited differently, presented differently, produced differently, and even performed differently in nearly every single way from the version that would eventually be released to the general public. They basically punked the entire metal community into reviewing an album that didn't really exist, at least not in the form it was intended to. It was so effective that I was still somewhat confused even when the real Ape of God record was thrown my way. I was somehow convinced that this was not going to be the end of it, that Old Man Gloom somehow had another album up their sleeve, and thus I was hesitant to really look at the album, let alone review it. Point being is that Old Man Gloom is consistently one of the more ambitious and entertaining supergroups within the last 20 years of heavy metal and extreme music. And as such, it was hard not to be intrigued when the band announced Seminar 8, especially when, to be entirely honest with y'all, I had assumed that Old Man Gloom was going to call it quits after the passing of one Caleb Scofield. But much like Caleb's other project, Cave-In, Old Man Gloom has no desire or intentions to cower away, enlisting the aforementioned Stephen Brodsky to fill in and help complete not one but two new records, one of which, Seminar 9, was surprise released nearly 2 months ago. With the band reflecting in a joint statement, these records have taken the simple act of being a band and transcended into a bonding and healing process I never thought music, or specifically Old Man Gloom, could be. Almost every song has elements of our last 2 years without Caleb, and even the songs that aren't directly related to him are embedded with the emotion and struggle for closure and healing that we're all going to be in for a long time. This pandemic we're all living through is creating so much distance between all of us. This is our way of bringing us all a little closer. And this statement actually immediately sums up so much of what makes these two records as powerful and as compelling as they are. There is so much heart, soul, and care flowing through the veins of these records. It makes these records feel incredibly cathartic, even therapeutic, something that honestly I don't think I can really say for previous Old Man Gloom records as much as I generally enjoy them. Take, for instance, the track Love is Bravery, my favorite track across these two records, which weirdly works as a sonic adaptation of the statement we just read from, with a strong Baroness-like chorus that manages to be subtle, heart-wrenching, and triumphant all at the same time, and large encompassing sludgy drawls filled with impassionate drums and thick walls of dissonant, angry music, accompanied again by some of the band's most poignant lyrics, such as "I am not afraid, I will never cower, in a world so lost, your love is bravery. We only have now, we only have each other. What we do right now will be our legacy." Now, this song was featured on Seminar 9, Darkness of Being, the album that was released 2 months ago at the beginning of the global COVID-19 pandemic. And that's fascinating to me because I think it's grown to be all the more poignant and effective over the course of these last few months as we are severed from the people that we love, from the people that we hold dear. And it's made all the more climactic, even cinematic now, with Seminar 8, Light of Meaning, in which we are beginning to see downward spikes in global cases of COVID-19, and as states and cities all over the world feel more comfortable about reopening, especially when you get to this album's final track, By All Love Is Healed. A bruising, noisy, angular, almost mathcore-esque kind of piece that hides compassion within its inherently uncomfortable presentation, as if it is literally the sonic translation of a phrase like "there's light at the end of the tunnel." However, while these records do a great job of pulling on one's heartstrings, removing the emotional component, you do find that there are some issues with the written music itself. For one, a good majority of the pieces across both records seem littered with pieces of noise and jarring electronic mayhem. Take, for instance, a track like Wrath of the Weary, which spends nearly 2 minutes almost drunkenly, even rambly stumbling across some weird, spastic, even glitchy bits and pieces, often popping in and out of the soundscape before the song eventually settles on thick, static-covered sludge and doom. Or on a track like In Your Name, standing as one of the more raucous cuts across both records, but unfortunately being held back by long periods of white noise and empty space, preventing it, for me, from becoming the monster that it very clearly wants to be. These moments do occasionally contribute to the lush, heartfelt vibe of the record, even creating a big emotional contrast in the album's most effective moments, but there are moments where it really does just feel like empty noise for the sake of maybe making the album longer. Take, for instance, a track like Canto de Santos, which frankly wastes nearly 3 minutes on pure minimalistic drab. Like, if I wanted to hear somebody tune their guitar and fuck around for a couple of minutes, I'd go to Guitar Center. Or rather, hypothetically, I would. Again, global pandemic. I love so much of what Old Man Gloom is communicating across these two records, and I actually think it's very brave and courageous of them to release these albums in this format in these times. But objectively speaking, there is too much jarring noise that takes up too much time and takes away from the emotional pull of these records. And before someone says it, I'm well aware that all of this is stuff that Old Man Gloom has done on previous records. I'm not arguing that it isn't out of character for them. I'm simply arguing that there's a lot of unnecessary fat clinging to these otherwise delicious ribeye steaks. I am going to collectively give both of these albums, Seminar 8 and 9, a 3.5 out of 5. I still think that despite their issues, or at least the issues I have with these records, they show Old Man Gloom at their most emotionally vulnerable and their most musically confident. I may not be personally entertained by every spasm of art rock, experimental, and avant-garde noise and atmosphere, but it still does contribute to the tone of the record, to the concept of the record, and can still create genuine emotional contrast. And when Old Man Gloom really does focus on the core of these songs, they are showcasing some of their strongest and most expressive material to date. Performed, produced, and presented with the utmost confidence and compassion. I guess it's fair to say that if you are looking for a more conventional sludge or post-metal record and you're not really interested in spending nearly 90 minutes on the edge of your seat trying to anticipate and prepare for all of these changes and switches, that Seminar 8 and 9 could be, a little much. But Old Man Gloom's most diehard fans will be absolutely elated with this, to the point where I'm sure they would dismiss nearly every piece of criticism I have towards this record. These are not perfect records, but they succeed at being what they need to be in this time, and I think Caleb Scofield would be very proud of them if he could see them today. 3.5 out of 5, you're probably going to have to exercise some patience for these records, but I promise you will be rewarded if you do so. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.